Martin Scorsese is widely acknowledged as one of the greatest, perhaps in some ways, the greatest cinematic artist of our time. Whether or not you agree with that is a matter of personal taste and subjective opinion, but either way it'd be difficult to deny that Scorsese, over the course of a now almost 60-year career, has developed a remarkably bold and unique vision, instantly identifiable by its restless urgency of presentation, its seamless unification of aesthetic and theme, and its nurturing emphasis on collaboration, resulting in some of the best work ever delivered by its participants, especially the actors. While Scorsese is mostly known for his focus on gangsters and religion, his concerns, as well as his insights, run a lot further than this. Beneath the dazzling style, the shocking violence, the macho posturing, and the massive entertainment value of his films, there is at work both a master storyteller and a curious, concerned artist, attempting to communicate messages of important spiritual significance. I believe that all great directors are made and not born. Someone like Scorsese may begin their journey with a lot of promise and natural talent, but in the end, those things aren't worth much if the individual isn't able to meet the challenges of a major career and the setbacks and hardships so common to life. That is where the real test begins. What makes Scorsese so good at what he does is the fact that he's endured and worked so hard to do it. He's made sacrifices, he's endured failures, he's seen countless ups and downs, and through all of it, he has never lost sight of who he is, nor what he is searching for. Watching Scorsese's films, from first to last, it is possible to trace an astonishing development taking place. The development of artist, craftsman, and human being, all happening hand in hand. Scorsese's artistic development taking motivation from his real-life experiences, and his refinement as a craftsman, allowing him to explore his ideas with greater thoroughness and skill. This is notably counter to the path taken by many other directors who, as they achieve acceptance within the industry, become more reluctant to take risks and gamble with their success. Scorsese has done the opposite. As his powers in the industry have increased, as his use and command of technique have grown, so too has he pushed himself to look ever deeper into his own soul and the world around him. He has challenged himself and his audience with projects that demand increasingly profound levels of engagement and offer extraordinary rewards for anyone willing to meet those demands. Something like that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lifetime, and there are several key works from relatively early in Scorsese's career, underappreciated ones at that I'd like to examine for what they reveal about the later pieces. Everything that blooms in art has some kind of origin, and the buds that eventually result in triumphs and masterpieces have to be tended to for a very long time. Here's where I think some of Scorsese's were first planted. Italianamerican was a shorter documentary piece produced in 1974 for the television series Storm of Strangers, about the experiences of American immigrants through the generations. Other episodes apparently took on more conventional narrative approaches, focusing on larger stories of different ethnic groups and their gradual, often painful assimilation into American society. Scorsese arrived at the material in his own way, choosing to tell the story of Italian-American experience firsthand, exclusively through the memories and stories of his parents, Catherine and Charles. He shot his film in a single evening spent having dinner at the family apartment. The resulting film, funny, engaging, a joyous portrait of two very special people, and only 50 minutes long in the full director's cut, is not one of Scorsese's most remembered or celebrated pieces, but it is one of his best and most personal. The director himself once remembered it as the best film he ever made, one that really freed him in style. Watching it, listening to the wonderful, rambling conversations that result, it sparks memories of the astonishing spontaneity Scorsese was able to capture in some of the best moments of movies like Goodfellas, moments where the movie pauses to observe behavior. But it goes beyond mere style. Thematically, Italian-American connects directly with everything Scorsese had been reaching for up to that point in his earliest work. It's possible to view it as a minor culmination of the ambitions present in short films like It's Not Just You, Murray, and freshman features like Who's That Knocking at My Door and Mean Streets. Namely, this is an attempt by Scorsese to confront the details of his own background, the world that shaped him as a person. By taking these close, personal looks at the reality of his life, the lives of his friends and family, by attempting to convey the vibrancy and the harshness of that world with its tight sense of community, the oppressive, ever-present threat of crime and violence, the salvation offered by church and God, Scorsese, the artist, is hoping to examine whatever it is that defines Scorsese the human being. Italian-American marks a kind of inner turning point in that search. Whereas in previous films, Scorsese seemed mainly concerned with presenting the details of his life as honestly as possible, in subsequent films, he seems more concerned with examining those details. I don't mean to criticize the earlier films, they have an immediacy and rawness that benefits from their more straightforward presentational style. But after making Italian-American, Scorsese appears to have grown an enhanced relationship to his past. He saw the conflicts, the traumas, and the struggles more clearly, carrying out of that an awareness that was more complex and intimate. Whatever Scorsese lost in visceral immediacy, he gained in piercing expressionism. The later films are about looking under the surface, digging into what the characters are feeling, not so much to ask why, but rather to present their interior spaces dramatically. Whether these films are about taxi drivers, boxers, gangsters, socialites, paramedics, or aviators, Scorsese sees them and their lives from the inside out, recognizing in them, in their fragility, their flaws, some shameful part of his own personality. The screen has always been Scorsese's confessional, and the sins he confesses are just as much his own as they are his subjects'. While of course I don't mean that literally, this intense personal connection to the inner lives of his characters remains a core ingredient of his art, one that helps it to resonate vividly. Particularly as a male viewer, I find it difficult to watch many of his films without recognizing some unspoken truth in it, some sin of my own. The director who dares to reveal this much about himself, and dares to accept the consequences of that honesty, is rare indeed. And without Italian-American, Scorsese might not have reached a place where he felt ready and able to do that. His parents and their story showed him something about who he was, about what was possible, and how he could defy convention to reach the hearts of the stories he wanted to tell. Noted as an extravagant, big-budget failure at the time, New York, New York has emerged in recent years as perhaps one of the most significant films of Scorsese's career, not to mention a pretty underrated musical and a fascinating experiment in its own right. Telling the story of Jimmy and Francine, played by Robert De Niro and Liza Minnelli, respectively, two aspiring musicians who dream of the big time, the film is, on the one hand, the story of their struggle to the top, rising from obscurity to stardom through post-World War II New York. On the other, it's the story of a romance that, while passionate and sincere, is ultimately destructive, possessive, and doomed. Francine, though capable of seeing through some of Jimmy's delusions and shortcomings, can't help but be charmed by his talents and antics, even as his jealousy and insecurity poisons the genuine love he feels for her. New York, New York is about intimacy between creative people. It explores the ways in which creativity complicates personal feeling, and the pains and contradictions that arise when a couple's emotions are incompatible with their ambitions. It's an interesting story, and this was Scorsese's first big-budget production. He indulges in enormous sets, lavish costumes, and elaborate musical numbers. As a result of these, the production quickly got out of hand, soaring wildly over budget. But even though the film can be unfocused and overlong in parts, it's still gorgeous to look at, and very moving in its tender moments. None of that is what I really want to talk about, however. What I really think is key about this film is the acting style. Scorsese was trying something very different with this movie, combining the artificiality of the Hollywood musical with the naturalism and improvisation recently developed in modern performance methods. He had experimented with improv before in brilliant minor scenes in Mean Streets and Taxi Driver, but here, he was pushing it a lot further than he ever had previously. The entire movie was basically rewritten on the spot, day by day, as Scorsese encouraged a huge variety of interpretations for every scene, guiding the performances into a wider range of expression in order to reveal more about the characters. That was the real reason the film started running out of control, because this kind of creative process requires a huge amount of time and discussion between director and cast. It isn't a matter of rolling the camera and seeing what happens. The way Scorsese was doing it, it was collaborative, a way of taking the actors along with him as he worked his way closer to the material and discovered more in it. When that's happening, as hundreds of extras wait around on giant sets illuminated by dozens of lights run by a full studio crew, it tends to get rather costly. But from these mistakes, Scorsese learned valuable lessons. After his career was derailed by the financial failure of New York, New York, and health problems and drug addiction collapsed him physically, resulting in a long hospital stay, he re-emerged with Raging Bull, a film that in every way builds upon and fulfills all of the discoveries made in the previous film. While Italianamerican may have tuned Scorsese in to the rhythms and speech patterns of the kind of people he wanted to portray, New York, New York allowed him to begin developing the methods by which he could achieve that on screen. Because we must remember, artistry is nothing without method. Using a more disciplined approach to improvisation and more intimate storytelling, Scorsese delivered one of the greatest achievements of his career. The innumerable, sharply captured subtleties and nuances found in every performance of Raging Bull do not feel like the affected gestures of actors. They feel like the actual behavior of real people. Over the years, Scorsese has even found ways of applying this style to epic productions like Casino, Gangs of New York, The Aviator, and more recently, The Irishman. It's a method integral to his genius, and it had its beginnings in New York, New York. Religion figures into every movie Scorsese has made, sometimes in slightly less than overt ways. Even in a movie like After Hours, we get brief moments like the one where Griffin Dunne throws his arms up and entreats to the sky, "What did I do? I'm just a word processor, for Christ's sake." It doesn't matter if you're a wise guy on the mean streets or a word processor having the worst night of his life. God has something to do with your judgment. The Last Temptation of Christ, a labor of love Scorsese fought nearly 10 years to get made, was so swarmed by controversy upon release that very few people were able to appreciate what an exceptional religious statement it was. At the time, protesters called for the destruction of the negative. Scorsese was sent death threats, and one opponent went as far as firebombing a theater in Paris to prevent the film from being shown. Today, the film is accepted a little more calmly and has been allowed to find an audience. But as religious disputes continue to divide and polarize the population, there remain some groups devoted to distorting and misinterpreting the film viciously. That's a shame, because this movie has more to say about faith and religion than all of this century's pious, reassuring Christian dramas put together. Adapted from Nikos Kazantzakis' novel, The Last Temptation of Christ stars Willem Dafoe as Jesus, interpreted here as being every bit the conflicted human male as he is divine manifestation. Through all the major events of the Gospels, we watch as Jesus grapples agonizingly with his dual nature. He is the Savior of man, the Son of God, but he is also a man, encompassing hopes, fears, desires, and an all-too-human capacity for pain. What this movie says is not something readily accepted by most trends of religious thought, and I'm not just talking about the fact that it speculates a fictional Christ being tempted physically. It is in the nature of faith. Many people seem to feel that faith is a thing perfect and unquestionable, at its strongest when it is embraced blindly. Scorsese clearly does not feel the same way. For him, faith free of doubt is incomplete. Doubt is what cleanses us. It's what strengthens us. It is only by doubting, confronting the questions of our faith, or, if you will, our lives, that we find our way to God, whatever that means to each of us. Faith, after all, is really a demand that we humble ourselves in our arrogance, a demand that we search for and discover spirituality within our materialistic existence, and a demand that we suffer, not because we deserve to suffer, but because in suffering, we learn the value of compassion, selflessness, and forgiveness. In Last Temptation, Scorsese presents these ideas, some of the most important and challenging of all his work, in terms direct and unambiguous, for what is arguably the first time. There is nothing to distract from the main issue, and not even a question as to the presence or the existence of God. The question is, rather, as to his nature, as in what is God, and how do we hope to understand him in order to live righteously? It's a question he's continued to ask in ever more contemplative ways in films like Kundun, Bringing Out the Dead, Silence, and the documentary George Harrison, Living in the Material World. In a way, these films may be the ones that present us with the most complete insight into who Scorsese is. Questions of faith and morality are implicit in everything from the crime films to the comedies. But even more so than in his autobiographical films, Scorsese's religious films are self-portraits. They are self-portraits because the question they choose to ask is not one with any definitive answer. If an artist chooses the difficult task of asking an unanswerable question, all they can do is reveal the contents of their own soul. That is what Scorsese does, and in so doing, we are all permitted a glimpse at his wisdom, his relationship to the divine, and his pleas to the rest of humanity. These are the things he wants to leave us with as viewers. Art is a journey. There is no finish line to cross. There is no final statement to make. There is no perfection that can be achieved. The most we can hope for is to gain some insight into ourselves and the people we share this planet with. The way that happens is by artists taking chances and risking failure to grasp at some kind of truth according to the lives they've lived. We as the audience must take that journey with the artist. We must try to understand what is being communicated, successfully or unsuccessfully, and we must accept the failures as a necessary step towards something greater. A great work of art is a gift. We should be grateful for it. We should not feel entitled to it. I believe as viewers, we must have patience as we witness our artists searching for truth and ways to express it, and we must remain curious, forgiving of the shortcomings and sacrifices that are unavoidable in human endeavor, and listening carefully for those precious moments when we can hear the individual's voice speaking to us directly through the screen. those moments are meaningful. They are why art exists. And they are the moments when we learn something new about the world.